Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Unorthodox Vegan. My name is Sean Gold, and today we're going to bake a cake. This is a very special, simple one bowl recipe. Came from Nora Cook's, one of my favorite recipe makers for vegan foods. So we got a lot of ingredients to include in this cake. We've got oil, we've got sugar, we've got flour, we've got vegan milk, which I'm using an oat milk. We've got vanilla. We've got cocoa. It's going to be a chocolate cake. We've got baking powder, baking soda, salt, applesauce, and apple cider. By the way, the applesauce freshly made. Just ground up some apples, a couple of apples, and cooked them a little bit in the microwave. Everything's good. And some icing sugar. We'll be doing some icing later. Lots of goodies, lots of components of this recipe. Let's get started. I'm just going to adjust the camera. I'll be back in a moment. Well, I had a little technical problem there with the audio, so you missed all of the audio in this. So I'm going to re-recording the audio so you get to see what I did as far as putting all the ingredients together. That was very frustrating, and I didn't want to record it because I had already mixed everything together. So here you go. First ingredient. Okay, so I took a cup of I was using oat milk, and it was vanilla oat milk. I took 1 cup of the oat milk and put in 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. That was to curdle it a little bit, give it a little bit of texture. I then set that aside, and then I added into a mixed bowl, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 3/4 cups of granulated sugar, 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt. And I then whisked that together, all of those dry ingredients together, and then I added in the liquid ingredients, which included a 1/2 cup of canola oil, 2/3 of a cup of unsweetened applesauce. I think I put the applesauce in first because I had it already done, and I was telling a story about how I cut up the apples last night, then put the chunks into a cup and microwaved it for a little bit, and just to cook it up a little bit, and then used a immersion blender to blend it and get it to the right consistency, and I added that in. So I put in the unsweetened applesauce, 1/2 a cup of canola oil, a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and I have whisked that all together or mixed it all together, and that's what I'll be showing next. So I was able to mix this all together, really nice and thick and creamy. But this is the magic ingredient: 1 cup of boiling water. I just boiled this water. I'm going to put it in right now. And as Nora says in her recipe, it's going to get watery and it's going to get messy here. It doesn't quite say that. That's really liquidy. Hang on. It's all whipped up. Now we're going to pour it into our baking pans. Now, cake pans, you could use either round ones or square ones. I don't happen to have any round ones, so I'm putting in some square ones. Let's see how this works. Let's see. I'm going to go with this one first. And I've lined them with parchment paper because I don't want to have a mess to clean up afterwards. And I want to make sure that the cakes come out nice and even and looking nice. So I'm going to put in equal amounts into both. These are going to rise up. So that will be fine. And I'm going to use a spatula to get the rest out. And I've heated up the oven, or heating it up to 350 degrees. I'll be putting it into the oven. It will go into the oven for, let me just check that. It'll be going to the oven for 30 to 35 minutes. And when it comes out, I will let it cool on a cooling rack. Then I will take the cakes gently out of the pans and let them cool completely before I start to ice them. We'll be making some icing though while that whole process of baking is taking place, or the cooling is taking place. Back in a bit. Now, in Nora Cook's recipe for the chocolate cake, she has a large amount of icing or frosting that she has included in this. And when I made this for my grandson last week, just as a test run, they loved it, by the way. There was lots of icing. So I'm not going to go quite as much icing. I did a half recipe, and it was still lots of icing. So I'm going to be, and my wife is diabetic, so I want to watch out for that. So I'm just going to be using a half recipe. So the first thing to do is to put in a 1/2 cup of cocoa. I think that's a 1/2 cup. Put in a 1/2 cup of cocoa. And she says to whisk it to get the lumps out of it. But frankly, I don't have any hard lumps in mine. I don't know. I don't know why I don't, but maybe I don't. So I'll be putting in a half cup of the of cocoa, putting in 3/4 of a cup of vegan butter. It says I'm just going to be putting in some margarine, vegan margarine, which I use. The Best-El vegan margarine works for me. I'll be putting in, let's see, that's a half cup plus a quarter cup. So putting in 3/4 of a cup. So let's go with that. And that's a little more than half a cup. So we'll put in a little bit more. And I had some chocolate still on there, cocoa on there. That's probably a bit of a mess. All right, let's get that in there. So that's the vegan butter, or whatever you want to call it. I'll be putting in 2 cups of powdered sugar. I don't have much powdered sugar left. I don't think I have 2 cups, but let's just see what I got. See what I got in there. Like I said, I made this up already last week. And my wife is diabetic, so she doesn't really like a lot of sugar. She doesn't have to have it. That's 1. I may have 2 cups in here. Let's see if we can get it in there. Oh, looks like we're going to have 2 cups. Now we'll just dump it in. Buy some more icing sugar. That works. I don't follow them exactly, especially unless they're, especially for things like icing. They're not that complicated, or they shouldn't be that complicated or that much to worry about. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Oh, vanilla extract. Let's get that back. I watch my cable here, my cord, and 2 teaspoons. I think I said 2 tablespoons. No, 2 teaspoons. Sorry, reading the wrong recipe. So that's about 2 teaspoons right there of vanilla extract, and 1/3 of a cup of almond milk. It has unsweetened almond milk, and I'm using my oat milk, and this is a vanilla oat milk. So hey, you get the bonus of having the extra flavor in there. So I'm using 1/3 of a cup in that. And it has it to do it in partially, and then mix it up partially, and then mix the rest of the stuff in there. And I'm going, we'll see. Didn't think I needed to do that, so I'm going to just do it like this. And there we have it. It looks beautiful. Looks delicious. So I'll be putting that aside, and when the cake comes out of the oven, I will be letting it cool down, and then I'll be icing it. So it won't be for a couple of hours before I ice it. Okay, back in a while. I added an extra 5 minutes in the oven after I did a toothpick test to see how they were doing against, coming up clean. Clean means that, if they come up with liquid on them, that means that they're not cooked properly. So, put it in an extra 5 minutes, or let it sit for an extra 5 minutes in the oven at 350 degrees. And when it came out clear, which means only sometimes a little bit of the flakes stick on it, but otherwise it's clean, it's pretty done. I'm just going to let it sit here and cool off a little bit. You notice that it's risen a bit, so that's pretty good. I'm impressed with that. It looks fine and dandy. So just let that cool down. As I said on here, once it's cooled down to a reasonable temperature, then I will take the cakes out, still in the parchment, and let them sit on the cooling rack for another hour or 2. And just let them I want to get them right down to room temperature so they don't fall apart and not too liquidy. And then I will start icing them. And that'll be the fun part. And then I'll serve it. And as I said, last week when I made this, the grandkids absolutely loved it. Even my wife loved it. Absolutely delicious, rich, chocolatey, lots of cocoa in it. Delicious. Anyway, we'll be back in a while. Well, I have let this thing cool down a little bit. I just flipped over the cake onto a plate. So I'll be using that for decorating it. And I have my icing ready. I'm just going to put a layer of icing on the layer in between. This is going to go into the in-between layer between the 2 layers of the 2-layer cake. So I'll just be doing that. And then I will be putting the top layer on top of that and then icing the whole thing together. So I just want to get a nice heaping amount of icing between the 2 so you get that lots of flavor and lots of that sweetness. And you don't have to watch all of this. I will be back in a minute. I finished icing it, and it's ready to do a taste test. I hate cutting up a cake for just one piece, but what the heck. just going to cut a small piece in here. And I do need to let this chill. The icing is just a little bit too runny. So we're going to just do that and just take a look at that. What that looks like. And get this out of the way. Let's do a taste test. Let's see how she goes. All right. There we go. 2-layer chocolate cake with chocolate icing. Still warm from being in the oven. Needs to cool down just a little bit, but oh man, is that chocolate. I said my grandkids loved this last week, and I'm sure you will too. Very simple to make, easy to make. Got a fair number of ingredients, but you can do it in one bowl. If you like chocolate, this is for you. It's healthy, pretty healthy. It's a lot of sugar, but it's all just natural ingredients, and it's vegan. So what can I say? It checks all of the boxes. That's it for this week's episode of the Unorthodox Vegan. Until next time, you can always reach me on my email address at vrcompanions@gmail.com. I'll have that up there. And please follow me on my YouTube channel. That's www.youtube.com/@the_unorthodox_vegan/. Until next time, have yourself a great day. Bye for now.